Hello, everybody. Haven't done this in a while. We seem to be live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and Instagram. We'll put Ion on pause here. I've got a new system, so I have to figure out how to make that work all at the same time. And I should get rid of this banner, I believe. Come on in, come on in. We're just waiting for everybody. There we go. We got rid of that. Comments on. Thanks everybody for joining. I think we are good to go. A week in review. Welcome. My name is Scott Sinclair. I am founder, owner, president of Sinclair Range, and this is a week in review. And we're going to do segments that include lessons learned from the week, interesting file or deal of the week, struggles of the week, and my observation, Scott's observation for the week. Those might be regular segments as we continue to do this live stream. And I'm going to try and do it every week. We'll see how it goes. This is not the best damn business show for medium and small businesses on the planet. This is not Mornings with Scott. We got too busy. We got too busy for me to do that show every week. And so we'll see how this concept goes. Thanks for joining us on Facebook, Ashley, and thank you for the sound check on that. The intent here, the purpose, if we can pull it off, if I can pull it off, is to give you some insight into what's going on Sinclair at Sinclair Range just once a week, and talk about how we are recapturing our momentum after. Those of you that know me know that we went through a bad period where I was sick. I had a prolonged sickness for about a year. Nothing serious, I don't think. Well, no, I know for a fact it's nothing serious, but I had a bad year, and we've come back for that. I'm 100% and for over a year now, and things are going excellent, and we're rebuilding the firm. But it's a fact. It's a fact that we lost tens of millions of dollars of value during that period, and we had to take a big step back. Last year. We had to consolidate to focus on our strengths. And many businesses that are in trouble or are going through a negative transition have to do exactly that. You take, 2 steps back before you can start going forward again. We sold some businesses, we're selling some assets, we shut down other businesses. Some people lost their employment. Not happy times, but that's what we did. That was the position we were in. And some of that continues today. We've got 2 significant pieces of real estate in context for us that we're under contract, and we're selling those and rebuilding the balance sheet and the liquidity. And I just, everything is going fantastic, right? In terms of coming out of that negativity, making the hard decisions that had to be made and moving forward. And we're into year 2 of this, and it's really going well. Now, we lost a lot. As I said, we lost a lot of value, and this is, in a sense, a rebuild. But I tell you what, we didn't lose. We didn't lose our effectiveness. We didn't lose our brand. We did not lose any of our key people through all of that. We did not lose our ability to execute. And as I said, the rebuilding is going great. And so what I hope to do on this recap is to invite you in to share some of that journey and maybe some of the behind the scenes thinking, some of the lessons that we're learning as things change and we go week to week, some of the deals we're working on, the issues we're tackling. And that's what this episode is about, or this concept is about, of this live stream. I'm going to try to do it every Friday. As I said, I'm just feeling it out, testing out some new technology. We'll see how this goes, but let's jump in. Let's jump into our first segment for the week, lessons learned. Can I tell you a little secret about doing deals? It doesn't matter if you're doing a financing, restructuring, or turnaround, an M&A deal. From an investment banking perspective, which applies to you as a company owner as well, and other professionals, there's really a limited number of tools that you need. And they're always the same tools. but you do need them. You can't really effectively do a deal without those tools. And the tools, there's an art to doing the deals. There's a skill set in terms of salesmanship, negotiation, how to persuade and present materials, but the tools are always the same. And three of those tools are this. One is a monthly rolling projection model. Some people call that a three-statement model. That's all good. And this is effectively the business plan for your deal expressed in numbers. And if you're trying to do a deal with a counterpart, at some point, you need to get through the numbers. You need to show a lender how they get into the deal, how what the value is and why, how they get out of a deal. That could be an equity investor as well, how they get out, what grows in between. And the numbers presentation of that, the business plan, is that rolling three-statement model. I tell you, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I had where I was CRO of a company that we were doing a turnaround. CRO is Chief Restructuring Officer, and we built one of these models. Hey, here is our turnaround plan, and you present that to creditors, which are your stakeholders, and here's how we're going to try to restructure. What I'm asking you to do, you can buy into it, not buy into it. And we present this in the form of this model. And the model comes with written in a Word document assumptions to the model. And so you can see, here's what I'm assuming, here's how it goes, here's the turnaround, there's the math of the situation. Because in a troubled situation, when you're trying to deal with a stakeholder and you need to compromise, get some sort of accommodation, it should not be a negotiation. It should be about the math. I owe you this, here's the math. I can't pay you, so we got to come up with some ideas. There's the math of the situation. Here's my idea, and that's what these models are intended to communicate. And I got a big fight with this lender. He says, Scott, that's not a turnaround plan. Well, yeah, it is. That's exactly what a turnaround plan. To him, the only turnaround plan was to fire my client, which obviously wasn't going to happen. And this guy ultimately took a pretty big hit for his financial institution. I feel like blowing them out on this channel, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to for now, anyways. But that was not a good. He's an idiot. Let's just face it. So, anyways, you need the rolling monthly financial projection model. That would be two. Like if we're talking about three tools, always on every deal, you need a 13-week cash flow. Not necessarily every deal, but on most deals, a 13-week cash flow. And you need a written package that explains what you're trying to do. Not a deck necessarily. If you're going through a transition, if you're trying to get from here to there, which is basically what Sinclair Range is all about, is helping you do that, you have to have a narrative. Every deal needs a narrative, right? You need to answer, why now? I'm going through this high growth spurt. I'm coming out of this financial distress. Why would you want, why would an investor or a lender get into your deal right now? You need to explain that. And to do that, you need to do it in something other than just a bullet point deck. You actually need a narrative. And that tool is very often a CIM, a confidential information memorandum. And it explains the deal that you're doing and the background on the company. And if you don't have these tools done, there's a pretty high correlation between not doing that work and actually failing on your deal. So right now we have a client that we're going to market with hopefully next week on a $3 million raise. We haven't finalized the structure, but probably a convertible. It's a bit of a startup, but it's not really a startup because it's a startup, but we're doing startup through acquisitions, almost PE style, private equity style. And so it requires a confidential information memorandum, not a deck, as I just described. And so all week I've been working, and Sinclair Range, the other team members have been working on the CIM and also the rolling financial model to go along with that. And we're not going to do the 13-week on this deal because, as I said, effectively a startup. So it would have a lot of zeros in it. And so the lesson learned for the week, because that is this segment, is how strong, how good AI, artificial intelligence, is getting at helping to write these sort of documents. I'm the writer. I'm almost not writing anything from scratch anymore. I'm doing a lot of editing And I've always been a better editor than a writer. But now I just talk to no, I'm holding up my old school phone. I just talk to the AI and I say, here's what we're trying to do. This is the company. I can literally load up documents like term sheets, contractual leases, tell it what I'm trying to do, and it's spitting out the CIM because I've trained it how to do that. I've trained it how to write in our voice because honestly, if you just go to ChatGPT, for example, the writing is terrible. It's just too fluffy and consultanty. That's not a word, I know, but but I don't like it. But we've trained it, and I've trained it in our voice, and it knows our deals. Our AI and knows our deals, and it's writing pretty well. And then I can edit. I go, no, you've got this wrong. That's not how we should position this for financing. We should talk about this and that and change the narrative. And the bottom line is, it used to take in the old days, like in the 90s, it used to take us a month, 3 weeks to a month to write a proper package. And you need to build a model along the way because, part of your package talks about the projections. But it used to take us a month, and now you're like 3-4 days. It's insane how productive you can be using artificial intelligence. So the lesson, I think, for the week is, if you don't adopt AI appropriately into your business strategy, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. I gave a keynote address about that earlier in May, I think it was, effectively along that point. Let's talk about a new segment, interesting deal or file for the week at Sinclair Range. We were requested by a lender that we have not worked with before to do a report on one of their borrowers and the situation that they were in. I don't want to give any details, but it was a bit of a logjam. And we were to do a report, which often investors, lenders will do that. They'll ask some sort of financial advisor to take a look at the situation. And it was for the benefit of both the lender and the company. And it was a really professionally interesting situation. It was unique, and nothing unique ever. If you've been around this business 35 years, like I have, doing turnaround advisory, CRO work, interim executive, distressed M&A, financings, high growth situations, like nothing's ever really new. Every situation has a nuance. The personalities are different. The stories change as to how they got into that situation, either positive or negative. But it's all the same stuff over and over and over again. Talk to any professional in this world, and that's what they'll tell you. But this one in particular was unique. If you're running a business and you owe a secured creditor money and they want the money relatively soon, you have a really limited universe of possibilities for paying back that money. One would be that you could, just broadly speaking, right? One is that you could refinance with some other lender, to get a new lender to pay out the old bank, get a new bank to pay out the old bank. That would be one possibility. You could sell some assets. Oh, I've got some redundant assets. I could do a sale lease back. I could just basically sell something and get some cash in. So that would be in the universe of possibilities. Not for every company, but just generically, broadly speaking, you could sell some enterprise value, sell a division, do an equity carve out, sell the whole business to get money in to pay the creditor. You could inject equity, right? You can bring in an equity player or a sub-debt player to effectively pay out the senior secured lender. And that's normally it. That's like, it's not complicated. These are your only options to pay off a secured lender that needs to be paid off. And what was interesting in this file is that they have another option. And the other option is they are growing so rapidly. Management is knocking it out of the park. And it really seems that they're going to be able to just grow their way out of this situation. It's really cool. It's really cool because what normally happens is you have that limited universe of possibilities, a refi, sell some assets, sell some equity, bring in, sell some enterprise value, bring in some equity. And if you can't do that right now, if it doesn't solve the situation, then if there's mutual trust between a borrower and a lender, you can agree to wait. Like, we're going to try and build up some opportunity here, and you do that in the form of a forbearance agreement. Well, this one was interesting and unique because they're really growing. And for us, for Sinclair Range, I was panicked
a little bit in the middle of this file this week because we charged a little bit of money to do this report, which is totally unusual for us. Normally, we'll talk to these borrowers and we'll see how we can help, and then we'd propose an engagement. And instead, this time I charged because it seemed a little more complicated when I first talked to the lender. We tried a little. We charged for a report. And I was panicked because in the middle of this, like we were just plowing hours into this because it was way more complicated than I thought. And I got, oh, wow, I really underpriced this thing. But at the end of the day, we over delivered on value, I think, for the benefit of both parties. And we may be brought in to help in this situation going forward, which is really cool because I like the people on both sides. I really like the entrepreneurs at the company, and the lender's been great with us in our short dealing so far. So that is cool. So that was an interesting deal of the week, or not a deal, but a file of the week so far. Don't forget, you can comment, join in the conversation, ask questions as you go, whatever you want to do. Struggles for the week. Let's do that segment. You know, business is momentum. Business is speed. And we are, Sinclair Range is a minority shareholder of a company. And again, I won't give any details, but we're a minority shareholder of a company that is a high growth startup tech company. Let's put it that way. And part of the deal is we have another shareholder, one of the founding shareholders that I want to say, I'm going to use the word represented, but I don't know if that's true in a legal sense because I haven't gone back to read the documents. But I felt pretty strongly like part of the deal was that the company that we took a minority position in owned some technology, owned the intellectual property. And as it turns out, one of these founding shareholders owns the intellectual property in their personal capacity, which means that the company that we have a piece of owns nothing. And so we all agreed that it was a quirk of how things started in this business, and that they would vend in the IP into the corporate body, so we could go raise money, which was the whole point of our mandate, is to go raise money to launch this company. But you're out in the markets and you're representing that you're selling something. Well, you need to have something, and that something would be the IP, and we don't have that. Well, this has been going on. We all agree on the action plan, and it's been going on for months and months and months, and we just never get the deal signed. We've drafted up assignment agreements and equity issuance that go along with that. We just don't get anything done, and the momentum on this deal was totally lost. Now, it could be restarted, and I love some of the people involved in this. Most of them I love, and the and the deal could be kicked back into a vice, into it could be kicked back in, restarted. Let's just try to say it that way. Here, you can tell I haven't been on camera in weeks. I lose my thought now on the words that I'm trying to say. We could relaunch this thing for sure, but we have lost all momentum. We've just been sitting around for months and months and months. And I provide the advice. We, as a team, the Sinclair Range team, provide the advice, and there is a workaround to the problem that we have, and then we don't execute as a company, not Sinclair Range, but the investee company is not executing on this. Why? Not out of malicious or anything, but just because, and not out of incompetence, but because the counterparty, the guy who holds the IP, keeps making promises. Okay, yeah, I'll go think about it and present you something, and it's just the same cycle over and over again. Bottom line is we're not succeeding. And I'm not quite sure what to do about it without being more aggressive. I don't think we are going to succeed. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I don't want to be more aggressive, by the way, just for those particular circumstances. So I don't know. Oh, I do know this, though. I have never in my long career fired somebody and then thought to myself, oh, I wish I'd waited on that. That's never happened. It's never happened. 100% of the time I thought, oh, that was way easier than I thought. I should have done that 6 months ago. I feel like that's the situation now. If you need to make changes in your business, just do it. Just do it. Don't procrastinate. Don't drag your feet. Get it done. You're going to be thankful. My other, I feel like this is turning into what grinds my gears segment. But, Sinclair Range has been a virtual team from top down. Let me reword that. It's been a virtual team at the top. So our core group has always been virtual, mostly because I'm phobic of paying for real estate based on prior experiences. I don't like that very much. All of our investee companies are not virtual. When we've had portfolio companies now and in the past, there's been, they're not virtual. But the proper Sinclair Range team has always been virtual. And the downside to being virtual is you need to really go out of your way to build culture, build a team, and to keep people engaged. And I worry about that. And I work very hard at that situation. And I find, it's even more difficult in the summer months when people are not necessarily mentally engaged and checked out, and it's beautiful outside and you want to go for a walk in the park or go play with the dog or whatever. And so this week we had a virtual meeting at Sinclair Range. It's a once a month meeting for extended Sinclair Range staff. So we have the proper staff and then some other people that are not necessarily full-time, but are, really important stakeholders of Sinclair Range. And what happened is some of my key staff, actually the full-time employees, just decided to skip this meeting. And it was really disappointing. It's really disappointing. It's not acceptable. If you're listening to this team, that's not acceptable. Having me chase you to deliver internal deliverables is not acceptable. And so we're going to talk about that more next week to enforce these rules. But I don't know, it's a struggle. It's a struggle, nonstop struggle. When you think about virtual businesses versus in person, you can't change culture, and it's hard to maintain culture virtually. That's just the bottom line. Like, you need to actively work on that, and it's harder in the summer months. I get that. But anyways, that's something that I've been struggling with, and the company's been struggling with this week. All right, last segment here. What I'm thinking about. What is Scott thinking about this week? Music. I'm being called. This is interesting to me. Anyways, I am being called into random Zoom meetings 2 to 3 times a week now from bankruptcy professionals and lawyers that are having a meeting with a new client of theirs that is going to go through an insolvency process. They're going to go bankrupt, not bankrupt, but an NOI or a CCAA in Canada. It's not happening so much in the US. And they need to restructure and they need a refinancing, which is why the trustee is dragging me in. And it's just happening more and more and more. I met with a struggling company this week. I'm not going to say where they are and what industry they are in. I will say that they are Canadian and they sell a lot to the US and they're impacted by tariffs, and they're down 40%. 40% they're down in revenue. We're not hearing about tariffs every single day in the news like they were a couple of months ago, but it definitely remains an issue. Things are great in the US right now on the, related to the tariff thing and the economy. I think the economy in the US is way better than the news is telling us. But in Canada, we seem to be unable to deal with this particular problem, our US trade dependence, and apparently our really, really, really ineffective new prime minister. And also, by the way, so dreadfully boring. Can you listen to his speeches? I can't. It's just too much. Anyways, seems to be highly ineffective. We don't know what's going on. By the way, just as I was logging on, there was a Truth Social post from Trump, and it says, literally, as I was logging on here, it says, "We have just been informed that Canada, a very difficult country to trade with, including the fact that they have charged our farmers as much as 400% tariffs 4 years on dairy products, has just announced that they are putting a digital services tax on our American technology companies, which is a direct and blatant attack on our country. They're obviously copying the European Union." That's what Carney said he was going to do, which has done the same thing and is currently under discussion with us. Also, based on this egregious tax, we are hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada. Effective immediately, we will let Canada know the tariffs that they will be paying to do business with the United States of America within the next 7-day period. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So that's what's going on in trade negotiations. And it's not going well for Canada, and it's not going well because, as usual, we lack leadership. Let me take away that statement. Under Trudeau, Canada lack. By the way, Sinclair Range does about half its business in the U.S. We have office in the U.S. in New York, and we straddle. So we straddle both countries.
So I'm not trying to take a side here. I just happen to be sitting in Canada. Our origins are out of Toronto. And so I guess I have that bias. And I'm not against the US tariff regime. I understand the problems that President Trump needs to overcome. He just has to. Like, the US is in a real debt issue and a trade deficit issue. There's zero doubt about that. There has to be a realignment in the US, and I have zero dispute with that. In fact, I support it. But, with my other hat on, with the Canadian hat on, it's a real problem for companies that are down 40% on revenue with no way to really understand how that transition works. And we had a leader in Trudeau who had zero leadership ability. And now we've got Carney, who basically has been telling the US to piss off and that we're going to go be partners with the EU and do everything the EU does. So he's way more effective. I'm just not sure that I'm buying into his policy. So if you want to know what I'm musing about this week, that is it. And what is the answer, by the way? Defense. Remember the theme in the Best Damn Business Show for medium and small businesses on the planet, Mornings with Scott, which we're not doing anymore. Defense wins championship. You need to aggressively, that's what we're doing, and all of our clients and our business directly, aggressively manage your cash flow. That's how you survive these sorts of transitions. All right, let's wrap this thing up. Thanks for listening. That was a snapshot of our week at Sinclair Range. Reach out if you want to. If you're a company that's going through a transition, we can help you with navigating high growth, with navigating financial distress, with doing deals. Happy July 4th to our listeners and followers throughout our community, and happy Canada Day as well. We will talk to you next week. I think this is going to work, so we'll see how this new idea is received by you. Talk to you next week.